Hi, my name is Jennifer Turliuk. I'm the CEO of Maker Kids and an author. Catch me on this week's episode of the Jesse T Show.
Jennifer, welcome to the Jesse T Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been amazing connecting with you and just hearing all about you and your background and all the things that you're doing to change little hearts and minds and to show up for people, and then also all the things that you've created. I want to just talk about everything that you've done in your lifetime. Do you have how old are you?
I don't normally share that information.
That's okay. So basically in the couple decades or so that you've been alive, we're going to squeeze it down in about an hour. So if you could just give us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you show up in the world.
Sure, sounds good. So I have a company called Maker Kids, and we run camps, programs, and parties for kids on coding, robotics, and Minecraft. And we use those as a tool to help kids build social emotional skills like confidence, social skills, positive relationship with technology, and resilience. So that's a big part of my life. And the other part, or one of the other parts, is I'm an author. So I wrote a book called How to Figure Out What to Do with Your Life Next, which is about my journey from being a dissatisfied member of corporate to finding what I wanted to do next, which is what I'm doing today with Maker Kids. And it involves principles from quantified self, design thinking, and lean methodology, as well as interviews with Silicon Valley investors, entrepreneurs, and professors. And it's kind of a framework to help more people figure out careers that they like, are good at, that help the world, and that make them money. So those are sort of my two major professional aspects.
It's beautiful that you're helping to shape minds and give children as old or as young as 7 years old. Is that where it starts?
Yeah, it's ages 6 to 13.
Okay, so 6 years old, where they're still kind of in that developmental process and they're still learning how to be a human, essentially in the very beginning stages of their life. How did you, I guess, figure all this out or get into this? Like, what was the inspiration for you to show up in this, facet of young people's minds as they start to get started?
Well, I'd always been part of education and running camps and programs and such for kids. It was something I was passionate about. And in my career, I got into this program based at NASA called Singularity University. And there you learn how to apply exponential technologies like 3D printing and robotics and such to global grand challenge areas like poverty, water, and education. And they asked us to pick one of the global grand challenges to focus on. And I did some reflection, and I came across a quote from Nelson Mandela that said that education is the most powerful weapon you can use to transform the world. And I thought, well, maybe if I'm able to make an impact with education, then that could impact all these other areas because it would help equip people to make a difference in those other areas. And so I also thought, it'd be cool to have a program like Singularity University for kids. And then finally, I remembered back to a time in my life where I was 12 and I was, a bit of a geek, and I was, kind of being bullied in school, wasn't that engaged in school. And then my teacher gave me an enrichment assignment for a book report to make a website instead of just writing a book report. So I made one about Harry Potter. It was the early days of the internet and Harry Potter, and got a good mark, kind of forgot about it. And then a couple months later, my brother came down the stairs holding a magazine, and he said, "Jen, didn't you make a website called Jen's Harry Potter?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "Well, I think it's featured in this magazine." And it totally was. And when I logged back onto the site, there was a hit counter that said how many people had visited the site, and it was hundreds of thousands. Wow. And there were all these comments in the guest book, I love your site. And that was super empowering to me, and it helped me get more engaged at school and realize I could be a leader. And I wanted to provide experiences like that for more kids. So it's sort of a confluence of factors.
So unbeknownst to you, you had become like internet famous. essentially.
Yeah.
How did you find out? Did when it was brought to you and it said, "Hey, look, did you know that you were here?" Is that how you found out?
Yeah, when my brother was bringing the magazine, because basically what I'd done is, like I said, it was the early days of Harry Potter and the internet. And so there weren't many images. There were just like fan illustrations. And so for this book report, I basically trolled around the internet, grabbed all those images, which, there was like 20 at the time or something, put them on my site. Since I was 12, I didn't know anything about copyright law or, anything like that. I just put them on my site. And yeah, the article and then some comments on the guest book were like, "This is the most comprehensive Harry Potter image website." So it was pretty funny. Yeah, I found out from him coming down the stairs holding the magazine. It was quite serendipitous.
Incredible. And so that was the inception of this idea for you to kind of give this feeling and roadmap back to others that were coming up and kind of pass along this education.
That's right.
Hell yeah. And so what did that look like? So you immediately got to work, or did it have to kind of bubble up in your mind for a while before you came to market? Like, how did the whole process work from that moment to actually getting it into the hands of other aspiring, kids?
So basically it started as a very small outfit, seeing like 5 kids a week, and then grew it to, fairly substantial, seeing a lot more kids per week. We ended up moving spaces. When we started out, it was like this basement. We had all these different, tools and supplies and all this stuff. It was like a, warehouse / almost like kid in a candy shop, but instead of candy, it's like electronics and googly eyes and craft supplies and all sorts of things, 3D printers. And that went pretty well. And then we realized the most popular topics were coding, robotics, and Minecraft. And we ended up having to move spaces. So our landlord had jacked up the rent and such. So we found a new space and transitioned to those 3 topics as our key focus. And then it really took off from there to a certain extent, like lots of kids signing up and joining and staying for a long time. And yeah, it's kind of how it evolved. And of course, with COVID, that's been a evolution as well, where now we're running everything virtually.
Unbelievable. So you had to pivot during COVID like many of us, but I want to get back to finding your first 5, aspiring, what do you call them? Do you call them students or
makers?
Makers. So finding your first 5 makers, how did you actually get out there and market? Did you find their parents? Did you go to like places where you knew that like kids would be? Like, how did you actually get your first 5 makers?
I had a business partner at the outset, and it was his kids' friends actually that were the first customers.
Very cool. So basically tapping into your warm market, like friends, family, relatives, who do you know? Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And then I really added like PR to the mix, and that helped attract a lot more customers as well.
What was the PR looking like in those? And how long ago did you get started with this?
We got started with it 2013-ish. Oh, wow. And the PR, we just started getting different articles and TV spots about us, kids holding up 3D printed creations and that sort of thing. So more people started to hear about it that way.
Unbelievable. And now, in terms of the scope and scale of, how many makers and where in the world you can find, this type of work. I mean, how far is your reach these days from 2013 till now?
So now we see at least a couple hundred per week, if not more. And over a given year, like multiple thousands.
Wow.
Including like our camps and everything. And now it's gone beyond with virtual, it's gone beyond Toronto. And kids are joining from all over, like the Caribbean, Europe, all sorts of places.
And how does that marketing work for you now in terms of like reaching a bigger footprint across the world? Is it word of mouth through the makers that you have? Is it busting out some ads on Facebook to kind of get in front of these people? Like, what are some of the ways that you're connecting with people around the world?
We've been busting out some ads for sure.
Heck yeah.
And people have always sort of heard about us, like even before COVID, people would reach out from different places like Italy or wherever and ask about our programs. So now, those folks are able to take the programs, and I think they find out about us, online, and certainly some word of mouth as well.
Incredible. And when you bring somebody in, a maker, whether they're, I think you said 6 to 13, is there like an onboarding, so to speak, or is there like an introduction to the world, if whether they have heard about it or not? Is there like an onboarding for the makers?
Yeah, there's a trial class that they come to, and we do an onboarding there, teaching them sort of a different mindset and everything. And then they join into one of our programs, whether that's a one-time camp or our most popular is like a weekly program where they come at the same time each week with the same sort of core group of kids, same instructor, and they do a different project each week. So it's all project-based, and all the skills sort of, help build upon each other. And so that's what our most common format looks like. We also do virtual parties too.
A virtual party, what does that look like?
Well, we've been running virtual birthday parties. They've actually been quite popular. We used to do them here, but now we do them online. And so it's a great way for, kids to safely gather virtually, and we'll run, say, a Minecraft exercise for them, or teach them to code a basic video game. Some time for kids to each consume their own virtual or their own treat, if that's been arranged, or present opening, that sort of thing. It's a whole new world of parties, that's for sure.
Very cool. Yeah. And I want to touch on, how your experience has been with COVID in a minute, because I know it's been very impactful in so many ways, but I want to get back to mindset. Mindset's a really big, I have a picture hanging behind me. It says mindset is everything. So when you bring somebody in your camps or in your world, and you're teaching them different mindsets, what are some of these kind of tenets, core, thoughts that surround mindset for what you do?
Yeah, we actually have like a slideshow that we go through with the kids in their trial class to go through some of these things. And we talk, so the instructors will share with them about my story, about the Harry Potter website. And, kids love Harry Potter, so they often find that quite inspiring. We share how this is, a maker space is a place where you can make things, and a maker space for kids is a place where kids can make things, and it's really a chance for them to make anything that their mind can imagine without, many constraints. And we also talk about how it's important to not be afraid to fail. Can't really see it, but we also have it on the wall here. So this is an opportunity to try new things, and they might be hard, they might fail, but sucking at something is the first step to becoming kind of good at something. That was a key line that we heard from one of our makers that we then, passed along. And so those are some of the things we talk about. And it's pretty cool because we've seen kids go on to do things like start clubs or attend a camp for the first time, all the way ranging to other things like being featured in a magazine or on TV, or winning a prize from NASA, or starting a business, using concepts that they learned with us. So it's pretty cool to think what they might contribute to the world, or what they already are contributing to the world.
It's incredible. Yeah, the legacy that's like being created based on this experience that they're having. And so you said that was it interning or full scale working with NASA at one point?
So I participated in a program there called Singularity University. So I was selected for that. It was like a program where you live on the NASA campus with other participants from, I think it was like 50 other countries.
Wow.
And yeah, you learn about exponential technologies like 3D printing and robotics, as well as space technologies, and then how to apply them to global challenges like poverty, water, and education. So we got to learn from like astronauts, with folks from Google, and Has some really cool classmates as well.
What was it that drew you to that camp? Was there anything specifically in those teachings from the 3D printing and all the different things that you mentioned, or was it just the experience itself and kind of just getting out there and being a part of this?
It's kind of funny. I didn't actually realize the full scope of it until I got there. I thought it was like a program that was geared towards entrepreneurship, which it was, but it was also so much more than that. So I was interested in the experience of learning from these folks and getting out there and meeting people. And then when I got there, I realized it was so much more. It really introduced me to the maker movement and to all these new technologies that at the time I didn't have as much experience with.
Where did you get the bug or the knack for entrepreneurship? Because everybody's different. There's some people that have mentors, whether they were parents or people they looked up to or people they admired along the way, and there's some people that just innately built into their DNA. They love to ask questions. They're seekers. They're triers or doers or makers. They like to do things and, like you said, fail faster so that you can learn how to do something decently. So which of those kind of fit your narrative? Like, where'd you learn how to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I think it was when I was a kid. My first business was Jen's greeting card company. So all the cards that I made for my family and everything, on the back, they had the insignia, Jen's Card Company. And I also somehow, I'll say it in like a fancy way, distributed my cards. I had a distributor in the form of my local church that I went to. Now, I don't think the licensing fees were very high. I think it was probably for free. But my cards with my designs ended up being distributed through the church. So that was kind of cool. People were buying them or getting them somehow. And then I had Jen's babysitting company. They all had sort of a theme in the name, obviously. And so I was doing some babysitting around the neighborhood. And then when I started to learn about products was when I was making jewelry on the dock at this cottage. And it was like there were multiple cottages that all shared the same dock. And, some folks mentioned interest in these bracelets I was making, like hemp bracelets and so forth. And I think this was where I really got the bug for entrepreneurship, because what happened was I was making these things and then someone asked, I'd like to buy one. How much are they? And I thought to myself, I wonder what the maximum amount I could charge for these is. My cost of goods was $2 for the actual hemp material. And my cost of labor was obviously free because I'd been making it. It took me like half an hour to make each bracelet. And so I just said $50. And the person was so surprised. They said yes. So they handed over $50 for this thing that had cost me $2 to make. And I went on to sell a couple more of those. And that's when I realized, the price can be really what you set it at. And then my next major business was DJing in university. So I ended up DJing for first, on-campus events, and then later clients like Red Bull and Moosehead Beer and stuff like that. So I think I've always had the bug, and it kind of evolved over time. And I was involved with this entrepreneurship competition at university that helped me meet a lot of entrepreneurs as well. And that's when I realized I wanted to do it not as like a side thing, but as a full-time freedom thing.
What kind of sets would you play as a DJ? Were you into like certain, like, was it top 40? Was it EDM? Like, what were you playing for? Was it anything that they wanted you to play, or did you have like a style and like do your own thing too?
I had a couple styles. So the first gig I did was for like the LGBTQ club on campus. They said, we're just gonna use an iPod or something. If people listening remember those devices called iPods, where they were MP3 players.
How far we've come, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I just picked up some DJ equipment. Like I can do it for free. And they were like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So that's what we did. And so my style for that gig, and it continued on from there. It was very much like house music mixed with some top 40, mixed with a heavy dose of like Britney, Madonna, all sorts of hits.
Yeah.
And that one went really well. They ended up paying me as well as plying me with drinks for the night.
Heck yeah.
And that sort of became my style. And I did a lot of gigs with them, as well as others that were like similar music style, but different groups. And then separately, I had a weekly residency that was classic rock. And I also like salsa dancing. So I DJ'd some salsa dancing gigs. So very separate styles.
Wow. You've experienced a lot, even just within that world, never mind your whole journey. That's really cool. And so do you still DJ to this day, or like dream about getting back to it?
Well, not a huge amount. I DJ'd at like a regional Burning Man event a couple of years ago. So that was pretty fun. That was my first time using CDJs.
What is that?
Oh, sorry. It's like, I guess it's like the new standard where it's kind of like these machines where it kind of mimics vinyl, but it's more like electronic.
Yeah, and it's like a smaller little like. Yeah. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And how was that experience? You took to it pretty quickly?
Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was pretty good. My friend helped me figure it out, and I DJ'd on a Friday night. Femme Funk Friday was the theme of the night. So it was a lot of disco, and it was super fun.
Oh yeah. Now you mentioned a local Burning Man. They do burns everywhere, but have you been to like the original Burning Man?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And what was that experience like for you? Because that's something that's I've been wanting to get to, like the original, and it's just been with COVID, it's been kind of tough. So how was that experience for you out on the playa?
Oh, it was really cool. It was the biggest culture shock I had ever experienced. How it happened was I was like doing this self-education journey in Silicon Valley, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next with my career after my corporate job. And along the way, I was couch surfing, and the guy I was couch surfing with said he was going to this thing called Burning Man. I was like, what is that? And he was like, oh, it's this festival in the desert. There's like music, art, a lot of entrepreneurs go. And I thought, oh, well, I'm interested in entrepreneurship. I want to go. So I told him that, and he was like, well, it's starting in like 3 days, and it's like really difficult to like get a ticket, pack, find a camp. And I was like, I'm just gonna try. And so all that stuff came together within a couple of days. This included me like commandeering a shopping cart in the hilly streets of San Francisco, like stuffing it with all these costumes and tents, and taking a ride there with some folks from NASA who I just met. Anyway, but the experience was amazing. It was a huge culture shock. Everyone was wearing these cool costumes. They were on these art cars, these huge decorated cars. And what was a culture shock about it was people would come up and say, hey, do you want a grape? Like, I hadn't met this person, or hey, do you want me to read a poem to you? So they would just come up to you and say these things. And at the time, for me, that was a very new experience, not something I would experience on the streets of Toronto. And it was super cool. And I really liked it. It was a transformational experience. It really helped me realize the second time I went that it's all about what are your highest gifts that you can bring to any experience, such as Burning Man or the world. And that's what makes it a way better place.
What year was your first burn when you went to Burning Man?
2011.
2011. Okay, so you've had some experience going back, and you said you've been to a couple outside of the local burn that they had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what would you give for advice for people going for their first time? They're listening. They are interested in going to Burning Man.
Don't Google image search it.
Don't Google image search it. I think a key reason that I ended up there was not Google image searching it. And if I had more time to explore, like to research the event, I don't know if I would have gone. But I think because I like didn't do that much research and was just like, this sounds cool, I'm gonna check it out, it ended up being a hugely transformational experience. But absolutely. Yeah, probably don't Google image search it.
If you're like the type to potentially be freaked out by weird Google image searches.
Or into that sort of stuff, you might be excited to go, you know?
Yeah, there you go. You could if you are. And then also, yeah, just try and think of like use it as an experience to think about what are my highest contributions that I can bring. And you may not necessarily be able to bring all of that the first time you go, but just start thinking about, what can I bring or how can I make this experience better?
And from your experience, I've heard about the barter system. Like everything's kind of like, trading things. Like you said, someone will try to give you a grape or read you a poem. Like how did that experience turn out for you? Like, what did you learn about the barter system?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a common perception that it's a barter system. And that's what I thought it was going to be going in. So I brought all sorts of stuff ready to trade. But it turned out it was actually a gifting system. So it's just like, so the economy there, so to speak, there's no cash allowed except to buy ice. That's it. The economy is basically gifting. So people would offer a grape, people would put on an awesome party, people would, do art for other people or paintings or performances. And I thought, that's so cool. Imagine if life outside Burning Man was like that. If you had basic income or something and you could just think about what are my highest gifts that I want to offer. Like, I think that's such an interesting concept that would be cool to try beyond more than a week.
What did you feel like you learned your highest gifts were that you were able to bring the next time you went and offer as gifts?
So the first time I went, I taught salsa dancing, and I think that was the main thing. I later learned from Burning Man organizers that the people who go for the first time, they don't necessarily end up contributing that much, but that's okay because there's like the next years they do, right? And so the subsequent years, I think some of the things that I contributed that were the biggest were naming people, like nicknaming people. So people go and get a playa name there, and I got named when I was there. It was a really cool experience. And then when I went the next time, at first I gave some ideas for names to some people just randomly, not thinking that would be my contribution. But then I watched them kind of I don't know, almost physically get bigger or come alive when they got that name. I was like, oh, maybe this is one of the things I can offer. And so I started doing that more regularly, and people, I ran into this guy about 8 years later in Toronto who I'd named, and he remembered it. And he'd said that it had changed his life. I don't know. It was pretty incredible. Crazy.
And what words of advice would you give to new burners in terms of just going for the first time and whether it's preparation or mindset or just what to, not to give too much away because you want the novelty of it, but what are some do's or don'ts?
Well, I think preparation can take as much or as little time as, I think there's some law, right? Peter's law or something that the time you spend on a task expands to the amount of time you allot to it. And so think about that with respect to your packing. I know some people, they devote 9 months to packing, right? Yeah. So you can do it like that, or you can do it in 3 days like I did it. So figure out how much time you want to devote to it. One answer is not necessarily better than others, but I ended up with a 7-tab spreadsheet.
Of course you did.
Of things to pack. And a lot of that stuff came in handy. So try and pack as most you're going to a desert, right? And yeah, other people have stuff, but I was the only one in a shouting vicinity that had a first aid kit on me. So bring the stuff, you would need in desert. Definitely bring food in your car, because when we were waiting in line, we got stuck for 24 hours on my second time going there. And we were in a camp with a meal plan. So we didn't have much food in our car. We'd pre-purchased this meal plan. We were going to each take turns making food. And so we basically had to scrounge off of people around us. So if I go again, I would definitely bring lots of food in the car.
What caused you to be held up for 24 hours?
It rained, and then the surface of the playa, it was like if you moved with your car, it would wreck it. I think it's like a historical site or protected site. So there's rules about that. Apparently, like, I didn't even know this was a possibility, but apparently some people have been stuck like that for days.
And that means you can't, like, can you get out and walk around, or no, you're just like stuck?
Like, you can, but it's not that good.
Dang. Wow. Okay. And how many have you gone to now?
So I went to 2 of the ones in Black Rock City, Nevada, the big one, and then local ones. I don't know, maybe at least 3.
Okay. So I wanna pick your brain about a local one, because we held a retreat about 6-ish weeks ago, and one of the things in the retreat, it was like a spiritual kind of retreat, and there was things like breath work and ecstatic dance and plant medicines and all these different things. And we were doing ecstatic dance, and there were some people from the ecstatic dance that had like an amazing time. They're like, we need to do something kind of local, and everybody started talking about, like, why don't we make it like a little Burning Man? Like, people get all dressed up and we'll have all this like artwork. Like, we started kind of going off the deep end. And so, any advice on throwing like a local burn/ecstatic dance event?
Yeah, I think so. Like, one of my favorite events that I've been to, or types of events, is not necessarily a regional burn per se, but it was like a summer camp for adults. I went to one in California called Camp Grounded, and also one here in Ontario. And that was super fun. It involved elements of ecstatic dance and costumes, and it was super awesome. So considering doing something like that, some of the things I liked about it were no cell phones. So no one brings their cell phone. Check them at the door. Actually, they had like, here it is in a Ziploc bag, bye. And they also had no work talk. You only go by nicknames. And then depending on the camp, the one in California was no ages, no time. So no timepieces. And I forget what else, but it was such an amazing experience. There was like a schedule with different, capture the flag, typewriters. There was a prom sort of thing. And that was such an amazing experience. So I guess my advice would be, consider doing like a nice schedule like that, and with certain elements of Burning Man and costumes as like a step towards it, perhaps. Because from those camps, so many friendships got formed, and then we ended up going on to like form camps or events to run regional burns or like travel together. It was pretty epic.
When you say capture the flag and typewriter, like, are we talking literal capture the flag, like playing that game? And then like, what's typewriter?
Oh yeah, literal capture the flag. And then at Camp Grounded, so there was this like former shooting range there. It was like a archery range or shooting range. They turned it into a typewriter range. So at each of the shooting stations or archery stations, they set up typewriters, and then they had writing workshops there.
Wow. Okay.
And you would write with the typewriters. So it was very epic.
There was also ecstatic dance involved in this as well?
Yes, indeed. There was ecstatic dance at both of those events. And lots of ecstatic dance at Burning Man too. And at the regional burns to a certain extent.
It seems kind of contrasting greatly with like, capture the flag, typewriter, and ecstatic dance. And this isn't a weekend long, or is it just one day?
That was a weekend long thing.
Okay, very cool. Yeah,
I mean, there were all manners of things. Like there were so many different types of things that you could do there. Those are just a sampling of them.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, getting back to kind of more this is amazing. That was something that, I'm looking into as going to Burning Man, and then also like doing something like local that's, just kind of fun. We've been talking about this, but as far as you going through the last, over a year now, we're looking at like 13, 14 months with operating in this new world of COVID, not only from a business, but a personal level. How has that been for you, and some of the shifts and pivots, things that you've had to endure? Because I know being in Canada, just, being an American looking towards, I don't watch news much for so many reasons, but some of the things I have heard, and also through other podcasters, that Canada has been like really hard for people, and in terms of seeing family and getting, out into the community, and like things you've been like truly locked down. And then with Trudeau, I'm not a political person at all, but I've heard he's done a lot of like really messed up things for people, making it hard to leave and get back into the country and all these different things. What's your experience been like living up there during COVID?
Well, we have, like in Toronto, where I'm based, we have had, objectively, as far as I understand it, the longest lockdown of any city in North America, including restaurants being like not able to do dining for like 362 days or something like that, at least. So yeah, it's been kind of hardcore, but I had for the longest time been thinking I want to do a solo retreat. This is pre-COVID. I want to do a solo retreat, but I never managed to do it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so COVID came along and posed the ultimate opportunity for that. So I have found it, tough in certain respects, but I also looked at it like, okay, this is the new world for now, or for however long. And so what are my opportunities or optimizations within that? And I personally have found so many silver linings and transformations from the experience. I mean, obviously it sucks that like people are passing away, and I don't want to minimize that. But I've also found some, opportunities for learning and advancement that I don't think I would have had otherwise.
What are some of those learnings and insights that you've received?
Well, I mean, going virtual had been something we'd always wanted to do for Maker Kids, but we were thinking, oh, it's going to take years. And then when it looked like we might have to close, I asked one of my colleagues to start looking into how we could go virtual. He was like, do you want this to be a full-time project or a side project? And I was like, well, I don't know if we're going to close or not. We were just like looking at what was happening in China. And I was like, side project. Anyway, and then suddenly it was like, oh, shoot, full time. So we ended up going virtual in a matter of days and transitioning all our clients. So learning to like operate a virtual business was a big part, and how to, operate and grow a virtual business, as well as different activities. Like since everything's more hyper local now, kind of, I found different areas of nature around my place that I'd never seen before. I got a stand-up paddleboard so I could go on the river there. I met people around my neighborhood that I may not have ever met before. Because normally it was like take the subway or drive to see your friends here.
Yep.
But then I didn't necessarily want to do that during COVID. So I met more people like nearby, so we could go for outdoor distance walks, which have been allowed at certain times. And
wow.
Yeah, so many more. I can't quite recall all of them, but
it's such
lots of reading.
Yeah, I believe it. But you took advantage of it in the best way that you could. And, we were talking on our first, chat, getting to know each other a little bit before coming on the podcast. And you experienced some hard times as well, some tough times in terms of proximity to loved ones and being able to hug people and being close to people. Can you talk a little bit more about that, like kind of the hardship that you had to go through?
Yeah, I mean, being away from my family for so long was really tough. Like I wasn't allowed to like hug my mom for like, I don't know, a year or something, or maybe slightly less. It's hard to keep track because the restrictions are always changing, but I do know that in the like reopening framework, there's like a line item for hugs.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so how did that play into your life in terms of just that separation from some of the most important people?
Well, we just tried to find ways to like interact in the best way that we could. Like with my Nana, who was in a long-term care home, we weren't able to really visit her as much. I set up a weekly Zoom call with her. So that was nice. It was really nice that her home like allowed us to do that. We also would like do window visits, where they would bring her down and seat her like behind the window, and we would be on the other side, and we would call, and so we'd see each other through the window. Wow. We also like waved. We would, drive and flash our lights at her place and wave and call her from there. And then with my parents, we would do like outdoor visits in the park or the garage, or actually on Christmas, because you were allowed to do outdoor visits with people from outside of your household. So on Christmas, it was a very cold time in Canada.
Yeah.
Very cold. Lots of snow and so forth, at least in Ontario. We actually had a fire. Actually, I think it was the day after Christmas we did it. We had a fire and we roasted marshmallows, and we, did a potluck, and we roasted some food, some potatoes on the fire, and that was our Christmas. And it didn't look like a traditional Christmas, but it was quite fun. We ended up doing it 1 or 2 times more. We're Ukrainian, so we did a Ukrainian New Year then at the fire with pierogies and all of that. So we just were creative and figured out ways to see each other within the rules, and did Zoom calls and that sort of thing.
How's the social, I guess, I've seen some unrest a little bit, like protesting, and like enough with like masks and enough with like lockdowns. Like, is that starting to kind of, heat up in your area? Or have you seen it elsewhere in Canada? Because I feel like I've seen it recently where people are just getting like fed up and they're like over it.
There have been some protests in Toronto. It's not something I participate in or believe in, but yeah, there have been. But now what's interesting is I've noticed in the news, both in Canada and it seems like the States, a lot of folks that were protesting or were against masks or vaccines or whatever are now turning the corner and going with masks and vaccines. So luckily we're not that was like necessarily the cause of our slowness in like reopening, but I'm confident we're like getting to a better place of reopening. Although honestly, I like used to think the Canadian government was pretty good in most respects, but in terms of COVID management and vaccine rollout, they've been pretty bad. Like my friend moved to Australia at the outset of this because she said they had a better healthcare system. And I'd lived in Australia, but I didn't really think that much about the difference. But she's been in Melbourne, and at the outset, she was in a heavy lockdown, very heavy, police guarded, all this craziness, right? Can't leave your house without a slip. But after a couple weeks or months of that, boom, freedom. Now they're going to concerts. Now they're going to football games. Now they're doing all this stuff. They are back to normal. Meanwhile, here, and then, sorry, one more thing about them. Then they have 3 people get it. Boom. They've got a 2-week lockdown, back to police guarded, all that stuff. And then it's resolved. They're back to normal. Meanwhile, here, it's like this loosey-goosey, like, oh, now we're down to like only 3,000 cases per day. We're going to reopen everything. Oh, shoot, now we're up to like 12,000 a day. Okay, we're going to close it down for months. It's like this whole, it's pretty bad.
what level of lockdown are you currently in? So it's June 21st, and this will come out in a few weeks. So just to kind of give some context, but as of June 21st, where's the lockdown today? Like, what can you do? What can you not do right now?
Well, even this question, if you think about it in Ontario, is kind of a joke because we've had all these different names for different types of lockdown, which is so confusing. One of the most recent ones was called an emergency handbrake. Well, what is that? Like, what is that? So, okay, as far as I understand it, what we're in today is we are allowed to gather outside with up to 5 people, and it can be from different households. You have to stay distanced. You can go to patios, which is a major thing. Patios got reopened. You can leave your geography. So you can go camping or, to different cities. And if you live alone, you can be indoors with one other household, as far as I understand it.
Wow.
That is sort of the maximum that you can currently do.
What about businesses and they're operating, or they at limits of like 50% capacity, still all outdoors? Like, are there some businesses that aren't even open right now?
There's lots of businesses not open right now, like hairdressers. I don't think gyms are open. And they've recently allowed shops, like with products and goods, to reopen, but only have 2 people or something inside them at a time.
Incredible. So looking past kind of just the COVID situation right now, hopefully getting back to a place where people can start enjoying life again at a full capacity. What's going on in your business, in your world, for the rest of 2021? What are you looking forward to for the business? Personally, you got anything going on? Like, what's on the highlight for the rest of the year for you?
Well, we've got our virtual summer camps, which parents are signing up for in droves, which is cool. So the virtual summer camps are really fun. They're like a great chance for parents to have 2 hours off per day, do whatever they want to do. A lot of parents tell us they cram their Zoom calls and stuff into that time.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. And then also our weekly programs and potential of reopening in the fall, depending how things go, like potentially reopening in person, as well as we'll always keep the virtual as our plan because parents have asked for us to do that. And we think it's a great format. And then, I'm doing different speaking engagements and things for my book as well. So lots of different things in the mix.
Beautiful, beautiful. And are there any plans for you kind of once things open up fully? Are you looking to travel, or any experiences, any more Burning Mans in your future?
I just got booked for my first in-person speaking engagement since before COVID, and that's going to be in British Columbia, which I love. So I'm excited to travel there, and Vancouver and other places, which seems like we'll be allowed at that point. So I'm sort of planning that trip. And I'm also thinking, I was thinking about tweeting about this, now that travel looks to be something that is possible at some point, sometime somewhat soon. Am I going to do the trip I had planned before COVID hit, but then canceled, which was to Japan? Am I just going to bring those things that I had planned forward by 1.5 to 2 years and book them, or do different things? So I'm still figuring that out, but I'm excited about going to British Columbia. That'll be really cool, and not sure what else. I guess it depends when things are allowed and what's allowed, but I do think that I'll probably have a bit of a shift. It was fun going to all those things before, but I've also really enjoyed the quietness of COVID, and I want to keep a lot of elements of that.
Oh yeah. Well, let me be the first one of the listeners and viewers to say thank you for who you are. Thank you for the light that you're shining in the world, and keep putting it out there. And we look forward to seeing the rest of what you create in your future.
Thanks so much for having me, and you too.
You got it. Thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll connect with you soon.